Alina Rao had never known a life beyond the narrow lanes and cramped tenements of Mumbai's outer slums. Dust rose in thin clouds as children ran barefoot past her. Vendors shouted their wares, and the pungent smell of street food mingled with the stench of garbage heaps. Every day was a fight for survival, a test of endurance against the world that had long ignored her. Her family was small. Her mother worked as a maid. Her father had abandoned them years ago, and her younger brother Arjun often depended on her for guidance and protection. Alina, at only 20, carried responsibilities heavier than most could imagine. School had been a privilege she could not afford beyond her teens. Instead, she learned the streets, the art of bargaining, and the way people navigated hierarchies in a society that never stopped reminding her of her insignificance. Yet Alina was different. She had a spark, a quiet intelligence, and a determination that refused to be extinguished by poverty. She read whenever she could. Old textbooks discarded by wealthier students, newspapers scavenged from street corners, and she dreamed of a life beyond the walls that confined her. But dreams alone could not fill empty stomachs or pay the rent for the tiny, crumbling apartment she called home. One sweltering afternoon, as Alina helped her mother clean a wealthy neighbor's house, she overheard a conversation that would change her life. "The new CEO is visiting Mumbai," said the employer's daughter, her voice dripping with entitlement. "They say he's ruthless, but he's brilliant. He notices talent, even in the most unlikely places." Alina paused mid-sweep, curiosity piqued. A CEO who notices talent? The idea was foreign to her. In her world, talent was invisible unless you were born into it. That evening, she couldn't shake the thought. She lay on her thin mattress, listening to the distant hum of the city, imagining what it might feel like to be seen, to be recognized, to have someone believe in her, not just for a day, but for her life. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Stanton Enterprises, one of the largest conglomerates in India, was sponsoring a citywide internship and scholarship program for underprivileged youth. Alina had no experience, no connections, and no guidance, but she had determination. She filled out the application with careful handwriting, describing her abilities, her passion for learning, and her dream of contributing meaningfully to society. Weeks passed with no response. Life continued as usual, working, helping her family, and dreaming quietly. But one morning, a letter arrived. Alina's hands shook as she opened it. She had been selected. Selected not for her family, not for her appearance, but for the intelligence, creativity, and courage she had displayed in her application. The first day she stepped into Stanton Enterprises was like entering another universe. The polished floors gleamed under bright lights. The air smelled of expensive leather and faint perfume, and the employees moved with confidence and purpose. Alina felt out of place in her simple clothes, but she held her head high, determined not to let anyone see her fear. It was there that she met Alexander Stanton, the CEO whose reputation preceded him. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and carried himself with a commanding presence. Most employees feared him. Interns like Alina felt an almost tangible wall of authority whenever he entered a room. Yet when his piercing eyes landed on her for the first time, Alina felt something she had never experienced before. Recognition, not pity, not curiosity, but true recognition. "Who is this girl?" a senior manager whispered. "She's from the slums. What is she doing here?" Alexander ignored the comments. He approached her directly. "Alina Rao," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I've read your application. I want to speak with you privately." Alina's heart raced. She followed him to a quiet corner office, feeling the weight of the moment. Alexander motioned for her to sit, then studied her carefully. "You have potential," he said bluntly. "But potential alone isn't enough. You'll need to work hard, learn quickly, and adapt to environments that are unfamiliar to you. Do you think you can manage that?" Alina's hands clenched in her lap. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm of nerves inside her. Alexander's eyes softened slightly. "Good. I believe in investing in people who have courage, not privilege. You have that courage. Don't waste it." From that moment, Alina's life began to change. She was placed under mentorship programs, given access to resources she had never imagined, and trained in business, etiquette, and leadership. Every day was a challenge. Every evening she returned home exhausted but exhilarated. Her family noticed the change immediately. Her mother watched with tears in her eyes as Alina, once timid and withdrawn, spoke confidently about financial analysis and corporate strategies. Her brother listened in awe, inspired by her determination. Alexander, meanwhile, continued to observe her growth. Unlike others who overlooked her origins, he respected her tenacity. He challenged her, guided her, and occasionally offered quiet encouragement that made her feel seen in ways no one else ever had. Yet the transformation was not without struggle. Alina had to navigate a world entirely foreign to her: luxury, social expectations, and subtle prejudices. Many employees doubted her abilities, whispered about her past, and tried to undermine her. But Alina refused to be intimidated. Each challenge became a stepping stone, each sneer a motivation to prove herself. Over time, Alina began to change, not just in skill and knowledge, but in confidence and presence. She learned to walk with assurance, speak with clarity, and hold her own in conversations that once would have terrified her. Alexander noticed this transformation daily, often quietly. His pride in her growth was tempered by his desire to ensure she never lost her authenticity. He reminded her constantly that power, elegance, and confidence were tools, not masks, and that the woman he saw, intelligent, brave, and determined, was already extraordinary. One evening, after a particularly long day of training and mentorship, Alexander approached her in the company garden. The sunset painted the sky with deep oranges and purples. "You've grown remarkably," he said, genuinely impressed, "not just in skill, but in who you are." Alina's cheeks flushed. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance, sir," she replied. He shook his head. "No, this is your strength. My role is simply to help you see it, not to create it. Never forget that your value comes from within, not from where you were born or the world's opinion of you." For the first time in her life, Alina realized something profound. She had been a girl from the slums, overlooked and underestimated, but courage, resilience, and guidance had begun to transform her. She was no longer defined by her past. She was empowered, capable, and respected. And this was only the beginning. The first few weeks at Stanton Enterprises had been overwhelming for Alina Rao. The world she had stepped into was unfamiliar, polished, and unforgiving. Every hallway echoed with power and wealth. Every conversation carried subtle expectations, and every glance from a colleague seemed loaded with judgment. Yet through it all, Alina carried herself with quiet determination. She was learning not only the mechanics of business, but also the art of surviving in a world that seemed designed to intimidate those who came from nothing. Alexander Stanton observed her progress closely. Unlike other mentors, he did not coddle her. He did not indulge her mistakes with empty praise. Instead, he challenged her, pushed her beyond her limits, and demanded excellence at every turn. One afternoon, after a long day of training, he asked her to stay late in his office. The golden glow of sunset spilled across the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the sleek furniture in warm light. "Alina," Alexander began, his voice calm but firm, "I've noticed something. You are intelligent, capable, and brave, but you still doubt yourself in subtle ways. You hesitate to speak up, even when you know the answer." "Why is that?" Alina swallowed nervously. I guess I've always been careful. In my world, speaking up could get you ignored. Or worse." Alexander studied her thoughtfully. "I understand, but caution can become a prison if it stops you from reaching your potential. You're here now, because you were chosen for what you can achieve, not for what you were denied in the past. Confidence is not arrogance, it's acknowledgement of your own worth. She nodded, absorbing his words. He was right. Her upbringing had taught her to survive, not to thrive, and survival had often demanded silence. But now, silence could limit her growth. Over the next few days, Alexander implemented a series of intensive lessons designed to transform Alina, not just professionally, but personally. He introduced her to public speaking workshops, etiquette classes, and leadership seminars. Each session was demanding. Every misstep, whether in posture, diction, or negotiation strategy, was corrected with precise feedback. Alina often returned home exhausted, her muscles sore from posture exercises, her mind buzzing from simulations of boardroom scenarios, and her heart heavy from the realization of how much she had to learn. Yet each evening, she looked in the mirror and saw subtle changes. Her back was straighter, her gaze more assured, her voice more commanding. Alexander noticed these small victories. He praised her privately, always emphasizing authenticity. Do not change yourself to please others, he reminded her. Change yourself to empower yourself. One evening, after a particularly grueling session on negotiation skills, Alexander found Alina sitting quietly on a bench in the company garden. She was tired, but her eyes burned with determination. You're doing well, he said, sitting beside her. I feel like I'm learning to be someone I wasn't, she admitted. That's the point, he replied. You're not pretending to be someone else. You're uncovering who you've always been, someone capable, strong, and deserving of respect. Alina looked down at her hands. I never thought anyone would see that in me. Alexander's gaze softened. I do, and I'm not the only one who will. But first you have to see it yourself. The transformation was not only external. Alina's self-perception began to shift. She started to approach colleagues with confidence, contributing in meetings, sharing insights that had once been swallowed by hesitation. Her suggestions were met with surprise at first. Some skeptical, some impressed. But gradually, her expertise gained recognition. There were challenges. Some staff members resented her sudden rise, whispering that she had only advanced because of Alexander's attention. Alina ignored them. She focused on her growth, on her skills, and on the mentorship that gave her tools to navigate not only business, but life itself. Her evenings were often spent in reflection. She wrote in a journal, recording lessons learned, goals achieved, and moments of insight. He celebrated small victories, the confident answer in a team meeting, the elegant presentation of a report, the way her voice carried authority. One rainy afternoon, Alexander invited her to a high-profile business luncheon with international investors. It was a test. She was to sit beside him, engage in conversation, and demonstrate the poise and knowledge she had developed. Alina's nerves threatened to overwhelm her as they approached the table, but Alexander's steady presence gave her courage. He whispered, "Remember, this is you, not anyone else's version of you. Be confident." The luncheon was challenging. Investors asked pointed questions, probing her knowledge of market trends, financial strategies, and corporate projections. Alina responded with clarity, drawing on the lessons Alexander had instilled in her. By the end of the event, she had earned nods of respect from seasoned professionals, and even a few compliments that had once been unimaginable to her. Alexander watched silently, pride shining in his eyes. After the luncheon, as they stepped outside into the soft drizzle, he turned to her. "You were remarkable today," he said simply. Alina felt a warmth spread through her chest. I didn't expect to handle it so well," she admitted. "You did, because you are capable, because you've always been capable. I just helped you see it over the following weeks." Alina's transformation became more visible. She carried herself with elegance, spoke with confidence, and made decisions that reflected intelligence and intuition. Her colleagues, once dismissive, now approached her for advice. Investors began to recognize her as a competent contributor. The girl who had grown up in the slums, invisible and underestimated, was evolving into a woman who commanded attention, not through wealth or privilege, but through capability and presence. And through it all, Alexander remained her mentor, supporter, and guide. But there were moments, quiet, unspoken moments, where their relationship hinted at something deeper. A lingering glance during a private briefing, a gentle touch on the shoulder for reassurance, a shared smile when a challenge was overcome. These small gestures carried a weight that neither ignored. One evening, as they concluded another long day of training and mentoring, Alexander walked Alina to the exit. Rain fell in soft sheets, drenching the city streets. "You've changed remarkably," he said quietly. Alina smiled, brushing raindrops from her hair. "I feel stronger, more confident, but I still have so much to learn." "Strength isn't about knowing everything," he replied. "It's about knowing yourself and facing the world despite what you don't know. You've done that brilliantly." For the first time, Alina felt the full weight of transformation, not just in skills and knowledge, but in identity. She was no longer a powerless girl from the slums. She was an empowered woman, capable of navigating the corporate world, commanding respect, and shaping her destiny. And though the road ahead was still long, she knew one truth with certainty: she would never be invisible again. Alina Rao's life had transformed in ways she could scarcely have imagined. From the narrow, dusty lanes of Mumbai's slums to the polished halls of Stanton Enterprises, she had grown into a woman who commanded attention and respect. Yet the deeper she delved into this new world, the more she realized how complex and challenging it could be. Power, influence, and prestige came with expectations she had never faced, and enemies she had never anticipated. Alexander Stanton remained her guide, mentor, and ally. He introduced her to the intricacies of corporate life, negotiations with high-powered investors, navigating boardroom politics, understanding market strategies, and recognizing opportunities where others saw only obstacles. Each day was a lesson, each interaction a test. One morning, Alexander called her into his office for a private meeting. His expression was serious, the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows casting sharp shadows across his face. "Alina," he said, voice calm but authoritative, "today I want you to attend a high-level strategy meeting. Investors, board members, and senior executives will be present. You are to participate fully, present your analysis, and defend your recommendations." Alina's heart raced. She had attended meetings before, but never with such stakes. I'll do my best, sir," she replied, though her voice betrayed a flicker of anxiety. "You will do more than that," Alexander said with a small, reassuring smile. "You will excel. I believe in your abilities, Alina. Now go show them." As she entered the boardroom, a hush fell over the assembled executives. They had heard of the slum girl Alexander had taken under his wing, but seeing her in person stirred skepticism, curiosity, and subtle judgment. Some whispered, "Does she really belong here?" Alina felt the weight of their gaze, but she remembered Alexander's words. "Strength is about knowing yourself and facing the world despite what you don't know." She stood tall, straightened her shoulders, and opened her notebook. "Good morning," she said clearly. "I've reviewed the projections and identified key areas for optimization in the upcoming quarter." The room erupted with questions, challenges, and critiques. Investors scrutinized her figures. Board members debated her recommendations, and senior executives tested her reasoning. Alina responded confidently, citing data, explaining trends, and offering strategic alternatives. Her clarity and poise gradually silenced the room. By the end of the meeting, heads nodded, some skeptically, others with genuine admiration. Alexander watched from the corner, pride shining in his eyes. "Impressive," he said quietly as they exited. You handled that beautifully." Alina's chest swelled with pride, but a small part of her still doubted herself. "Do you really think I belong in that room?" she asked softly. "Not only do you belong," Alexander replied firmly, "you are meant to be there. Intelligence, courage, and preparation are what matter, nothing else." As weeks turned into months, Alina's presence in Stanton Enterprises became increasingly prominent. She led small teams, coordinated projects, and presented to investors, all while maintaining the humility and authenticity that had first drawn Alexander's attention. She was no longer the timid girl from the slums. She was an emerging leader, empowered by skill, knowledge, and self-belief. Yet with power came scrutiny. Some colleagues resented her rapid rise, attributing it to Alexander's mentorship rather than her capabilities. Rumors circulated suggesting favoritism or personal connection. Alina ignored these whispers, focusing instead on results. Each success became her shield, each failure a lesson. Outside the office, her personal life began to change as well. For the first time, she experienced a world she had never imagined: luxury, refinement, and choice. Shopping trips became lessons in elegance and presence. Social events became opportunities to observe and practice etiquette. And even simple dinners became moments to refine her confidence. Alexander guided her through these experiences with patience. He explained the nuances of social interactions, the subtleties of body language, and the importance of perception. "Power is not only about what you know," he told her one evening as they walked through a private garden on the company terrace. "It's about how you carry yourself, how you respond under scrutiny, and how you inspire trust and respect." Alina listened, absorbing every word. The girl who had once survived by blending into the background now learned to stand out with dignity. She realized that empowerment was not just financial or professional. It was psychological and emotional, the ability to own space, assert boundaries, and navigate a world that had once seemed impossible. There were moments of doubt, of course. She sometimes questioned whether she could truly sustain this transformation. Her old fears whispered in the corners of her mind, "You're not good enough. You don't belong here." Alexander recognized these moments and addressed them directly. "Alina, empowerment is not the absence of doubt," he said. "It's acting despite it. Courage doesn't mean you never fear. It means you choose to move forward even when you do." One pivotal evening tested her growth. The company faced a critical negotiation with a major international partner. Alexander invited Alina to take the lead, presenting the proposal, defending terms, and negotiating concessions. The stakes were high. Investors, lawyers, and foreign executives watched her every word, anticipating hesitation or error. Alina felt a surge of adrenaline as she began speaking. Her voice was steady, her reasoning clear, her confidence undeniable. The negotiation was tough. Counteroffers, objections, and aggressive tactics challenged her at every turn. Yet Alina remained composed, strategically countering arguments, presenting facts, and appealing to mutual benefit. By the end, the deal was finalized on favorable terms, earning her nods of respect from the skeptical executives. Alexander, who had observed silently, finally spoke privately as they exited the conference room. "That," he said, his eyes shining, "was the moment you truly became unstoppable. You are no longer a girl from the slums. You a real woman empowered, capable of shaping your own destiny and influencing the world around you." Alina smiled, tears of pride and relief brimming in her eyes. She realized that empowerment was not a destination. It was a journey, a series of choices, and a commitment to growth. She had learned to navigate wealth, influence, and scrutiny while retaining her authenticity, her courage, and her empathy. That night, as she returned home to her small apartment, a space that now felt both familiar and distant, she understood that her transformation was complete in spirit. She was no longer defined by her past, by poverty, or by the limitations others had imposed on her. She was an empowered woman, capable, confident, and ready to embrace the life she had once only dreamed of. And standing beside her in this journey, guiding but never overshadowing her, was Alexander Stanton, the man who had recognized her potential when no one else had, the mentor who had transformed her world, and the ally who believed in her when the world doubted. For Alina Rao, the girl from the slums, the first steps into the world of power were only the beginning of a life defined by strength, agency, and empowerment. The world Alina Rao had stepped into was dazzling, yet it was not without its shadows. As her reputation within Stanton Enterprises grew, so too did the attention she received, both admiring and critical. Colleagues who had once dismissed her were now forced to recognize her abilities, and not all of them reacted kindly. Some whispered behind her back, implying favoritism. Others attempted to undermine her work subtly, questioning her analyses, challenging her in meetings, or withholding information. For a woman who had grown up navigating the challenges of survival, these veiled attacks were familiar, but different. Now, the stakes were higher, the consequences more significant, and the scrutiny more intense. Alina felt the weight of expectation pressing on her shoulders. Each decision she made, each recommendation she presented, was scrutinized not only for accuracy, but for the perceived motive behind it. The whispers implied that her success was not her own, that she had advanced due to Alexander Stanton's patronage rather than her skill. One afternoon, during a high-stakes meeting with department heads, she faced this scrutiny head-on. A senior executive, his tone dripping with condescension, challenged her proposal. "Miss Rao, are you certain these projections are realistic?" he asked. "It seems optimistic for someone without prior experience at this level." Alina's heart thumped in her chest, but she remembered Alexander's teachings, confidence rooted in knowledge, poise under pressure, and authenticity above all. She straightened her back, met his gaze firmly, and responded with calm precision. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice steady. "I've analyzed the historical trends, factored in current market conditions, and consulted with multiple departments to ensure accuracy. These projections are achievable and reflect both realistic and strategic growth targets." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. The executive's condescension faltered. For the first time, he seemed unsure, as though Alina's clarity and authority were undeniable. By the end of the meeting, her recommendations were accepted. Some colleagues approached her afterward, offering reluctant acknowledgement of her competence. Others, however, continued to murmur behind closed doors. Alina learned quickly that professional growth in such an environment required resilience, an ability to absorb criticism, deflect envy, and maintain focus on long-term goals. At home that evening, Alina reflected on the challenges. She had grown from a girl surviving the slums to a woman commanding respect in boardrooms, yet she still felt the lingering echo of self-doubt. The world she had entered demanded excellence, and excellence required constant vigilance. Alexander, noticing her fatigue during their evening mentoring session, addressed it directly. "Alina, I see the pressure is getting to you," he said gently. "But remember, adversity is part of growth. The envy, the whispers, the skepticism, they are signs that you are making an impact. Do not fear them, face them, and let them strengthen you." She nodded slowly. "I understand, but sometimes I feel torn. Part of me wonders if I truly belong here or if I'm just playing a role that everyone else expects of me." He leaned closer, his tone firm but encouraging. "Belonging isn't about where you started or who you were. It's about who you are, what you contribute, and how you carry yourself. You belong because you earned it, not because of me, not because of luck, because of you." The reassurance was grounding. Alina realized that empowerment was as much internal as it was external. Recognition from others, while validating, was not the ultimate measure of her worth. What mattered most was her belief in herself, her willingness to act despite doubt, and her capacity to maintain integrity in a world that tested it relentlessly. Over the following weeks, she took these lessons to heart. She began to assert herself in meetings more confidently, offered solutions without hesitation, and refused to be intimidated by senior executives or skeptical colleagues. Each success further cemented her self-confidence. Each challenge she overcame reinforced the truth of Alexander's words. She was capable, deserving, and empowered. Yet the path was not without emotional trials. The constant pressure, the whispers, and the lingering fear of failure sometimes weighed heavily on her. On particularly difficult evenings, she would find solace in reflection, journaling her thoughts, analyzing her actions, and reminding herself of her journey from the slums to the corporate world. One evening, after an exhausting week of presentations and strategy sessions, Alexander invited her to join him in a quiet rooftop garden overlooking the city. Rain had just passed, leaving the air crisp and the skyline sparkling under the evening lights. "You've done remarkably well this week," he said, his gaze steady. "But I sense your spirit is heavy." Alina sighed, leaning against the railing. "It's a lot. I feel like every success is questioned, every step scrutinized. Sometimes I wonder if I'm truly making a difference or just filling expectations." Alexander placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Impact isn't measured by applause or approval. It's measured by action, by courage, by persistence. You are making a difference. That difference may not always be recognized immediately, but it is real. Never doubt that. She looked at him, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. His presence had become more than guidance. It was an anchor, a source of confidence and encouragement that steadied her amidst the storm of doubt and scrutiny. In the weeks that followed, Alina faced increasingly complex challenges, leading cross-department initiatives, presenting to international investors, and navigating delicate interpersonal dynamics. Each success reinforced her empowerment, while each setback taught resilience. She learned to manage envy among peers with grace, to respond to criticism without defensiveness, and to assert her authority without aggression. Her transformation was now complete, not only in skill and knowledge, but in character and self-perception. She was no longer a girl defined by poverty, circumstance, or public opinion. She was a woman empowered, capable of navigating power, wielding influence, and maintaining authenticity in the face of scrutiny. And through it all, Alexander remained her steadfast ally, observing her growth with pride, challenging her when necessary, and providing unwavering support. The girl from the slums had become a woman who could face the world fearlessly, armed not with wealth or privilege, but with knowledge, confidence, and inner strength. Alina Rao's journey from vulnerability to empowerment was far from over, but for the first time, she faced the future with conviction, courage, and the certainty that she could shape her own destiny. The whispers of envy, the doubts, and the challenges were no longer obstacles. They were tests she was ready to conquer. Months had passed since Alina Rao first stepped into Stanton Enterprises. The girl who had grown up in the slums, once overlooked and underestimated, had transformed into a woman who carried herself with grace, confidence, and authority. Her journey had been challenging, filled with trials, self-doubt, and scrutiny. But it had also been profoundly transformative. Every challenge she had faced, every whispered doubt she had overcome, had strengthened her resolve and refined her capabilities. The day of the company's annual gala arrived, a night meant to celebrate Stanton Enterprises' achievements and recognize exceptional talent. For Alina, it held a deeper significance. This gala would be her first public appearance as a leader, fully recognized not just for her intelligence and contributions, but as a symbol of what determination, courage, and empowerment could achieve. As she prepared in her suite, Alina reflected on how far she had come. The simple girl who had navigated narrow, dusty alleys with dreams in her heart had learned to navigate boardrooms, negotiations, and the subtleties of influence with poise. She had gained not only professional skill but personal empowerment, the ability to assert herself, command respect, and shape her own destiny. Alexander Stanton entered quietly, dressed impeccably, his presence steady and reassuring. "You look remarkable," he said, his voice calm but warm. Alina smiled, a mixture of nerves and pride coursing through her. "Thank you, sir," or "Alexander," she corrected herself, feeling a subtle familiarity that had grown over months of mentorship and guidance. "Alexander," he affirmed with a gentle nod. "Tonight isn't about appearances, it's about recognition, your recognition." The gala hall glittered with chandeliers, elegant attire, and the buzz of conversation among executives, investors, and media representatives. Alina felt a surge of anticipation as they entered. Eyes turned toward her, some curious, some skeptical, and some admiring. She held her head high, letting the confidence she had cultivated carry her forward. Alexander led her to the stage when the formal recognition portion of the evening began. The audience expected the usual speeches, awards, and ceremonial gestures, but tonight would be different. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began, his commanding voice silencing the room, "Stanton Enterprises thrives because of talent, dedication, and vision. Tonight we recognize an individual whose journey embodies all three. Someone who has transformed challenges into opportunities, doubt into determination, and potential into achievement." Gasps and murmurs swept through the room as he gestured toward Alina. "Alina Rao," he continued, "has not only demonstrated exceptional skill, intelligence, and leadership, but she has done so while overcoming obstacles that most would find insurmountable. Her journey from the slums of Mumbai to this stage is a testament to resilience, courage, and empowerment." Alina's heart raced. She had dreamed of recognition but never imagined it would be so public, so profound. Applause filled the hall as Alexander presented her with a plaque honoring her contributions to the company, her leadership in complex projects, and her extraordinary personal growth. As she accepted the plaque, her mind flashed back to the dusty streets of her childhood, the cramped apartment, the struggles, the moments when she had felt invisible. And now, here she was, fully seen, fully recognized, and fully empowered. Alexander stepped closer, his gaze meeting hers. "Alina, your journey inspires all of us. You are living proof that courage, determination, and integrity can overcome even the most daunting obstacles." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. The recognition was more than professional. It was personal validation. She had fought for this, learned for this, and now she stood in a room full of powerful people, acknowledged not because of her mentor, but because of herself. The applause continued as colleagues, executives, and investors approached to congratulate her. Some whispered apologies for doubting her, others offered genuine admiration. Alina realized that respect was now firmly established, not forced, not assumed, but earned. Later that evening, in the quiet of the terrace overlooking the city, Alexander and Alina shared a private moment away from the crowd. The lights of Mumbai shimmered like a million possibilities stretched before them. "You've done it," Alexander said softly, pride evident in his voice. "You've proven not only to them, but to yourself, what you are capable of." Alina smiled, the weight of past struggles melting into relief and triumph. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance," she admitted, though she knew the truth. She had done the work, faced the challenges, and made the choices herself. He shook his head. "No, you did this. I merely helped you see what was already inside you. The courage, the intelligence, the resilience, that. was always yours. In that moment, Alina fully understood the meaning of empowerment. It was not about wealth, privilege, or external validation. It was about recognizing one's own worth, claiming agency over one's life, and acting with courage and integrity despite doubt or scrutiny. The gala concluded, but for Alina, it marked a new beginning. She was no longer defined by the circumstances of her birth, the limitations imposed by society, or the doubts of others. She had stepped fully into her power, her voice resonating with confidence and authority. Alexander, standing beside her, was more than a mentor now. He was a witness to her transformation, a partner in her journey, and a steadfast supporter who had guided without overshadowing. Their connection, built on respect, trust, and mutual admiration, hinted at possibilities beyond professional collaboration, a deeper bond forged through shared challenges and triumphs. As the city lights flickered below, Alina reflected on the journey from the slums to empowerment. The streets she had once known, with their hardships and limitations, had shaped her resilience. The opportunities at Stanton Enterprises had honed her skills. Alexander's guidance had illuminated the path, but the strength she displayed was entirely her own. The girl who had once felt invisible now stood fully recognized. The woman who had once doubted herself now walked with certainty and pride. Alina Rao had transformed not because the world granted her permission, but because she claimed her power and refused to settle for anything less than her full potential. And as she gazed at the skyline, hand in hand with Alexander, she knew one thing with unwavering clarity: her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever lay ahead, because she was no longer defined by circumstance, but by the strength, courage, and empowerment she had earned. The once invisible girl from the slums had become an empowered woman, respected, confident, and unstoppable.